Hi everyone, and welcome to the compilation video of the Talent Enablement Conference. For 2 days, we had 12 speakers, a digital audience, a virtual applause, a laughter coach, and even a yoga session. In this 20-minute recap video, we'll give you a little taste of what the conference was like with some of the best and most insightful bits. If you have the time, I really urge you to check out the entire sessions, which you can find in the description box below. Let's get started! Our first speaker was Leah Nobler, Talent Acquisition Director at Help Scout. And as a fully remote company, Leah was the perfect person to question on how they do hiring. Let's take a look at one of the clips where Leah shares one of her many practical tips.
A question more related to your actual job, right? You're the Director of Talent Acquisition. You've hired a lot of people in the past couple of months, like you said. So how are hiring procedures and policies influenced by the fact that you guys are remote?
Yeah, so we hire people without ever meeting them in person, which I really love. And it clearly it works. We've hired amazing people all over the world that we don't meet until after we've hired them. So the big change is, as you would imagine, all the interviews are done over video. And also, another really important piece of our hiring process is a take-home project. So there are a few stages before it, but once you reach the project stage, we think this is a really important time for the candidate to be able to, work on a small, relevant project that shows their skills and how they communicate with us. And we're, not only just assessing their skills, but that communication piece is so critical to a remote company. You really have to be a strong verbal communicator, but also a really strong communicator in writing. So we're assessing and gathering data around that through the project. And I think it really helps us make really informed decisions about who to bring on to our team. And then I'm just obsessed with candidate experience. I want people who interview at Help Scout and don't get a job to still think positively of their experience, to still tell their friends, hey, that's a company you should definitely apply to. So, I'm doing everything on my end to treat candidates with respect, make things efficient, keep in touch with candidates, and every single person who applies, here's some sort of response. I think it's really common, at least in the US, that you apply to a job at a company and you never even hear back. And I hate that. I think that's such a horrible thing that's become accepted. And so we really don't do that at Help Scout, and I'm proud of that.
Wow, I really love that, especially the take-home project and the fact that the candidate experience is so important to her. I really think this will benefit Help Scout in the long run. Leah also uses an engagement tool to send out periodic pulses. Here we will see a clip of Leah explaining what her tips are when she sees a drop in engagement.
In the comments is asking, all right, so if it happens that your engagement numbers are dropping, which I guess a lot of companies are going through right now, or at least have gone through in these times, what's your number one tip to deal with them?
Make a plan. Take the survey wherever the scores have dropped, and people usually write in comments or give feedback, and then talk about, as a company, what are you going to do to address it? And you have to make it public. I think that's the thing that is essential, is people will believe surveys matter if you actually take action after them. If they do a survey and nothing changes, they're not going to care the next time you ask them. So you have to be really clear about what your action items are. What are you going to change? What are you going to do differently based on what people said in the survey? And then show how you're going to do it. And a couple months from now, say, hey, this is what we've been doing. Remember you said on the survey, you didn't like this thing or you were upset about this thing. Here's what we've been doing. So you're constantly talking about the change you're making. And then people start to realize, oh yeah, they are taking this seriously. And then I bet your scores would go up the next time.
Transparency and taking action is really important here, whether you're working from home, you're a fully remote company, or even if you're working in the office. In the next clip, Glenn, HR Tech and Data Analytics Manager at Brussels Airport, will share how HR data can be valuable for different organizations and different situations. From organizations that have just started using HR data to the ones that have more experience with it, let's take a look at the two examples.
I'll give an example of two companies. Company A, there the question is from the business managers to implement a training management system because they want to have on a monthly basis an overview of which employees follow a training. Is it internally or externally, with which provider, and how long did it take? And that is enough for the business managers. And the procurement department also said, oh, but we see that 80% of our trainings are with that provider. Next year, we're going to try to negotiate a discount. So that is descriptive analytics, but it can be used by business managers, HR, and even the procurement department to take decisions. So that brings for that company already a lot of value. But then in another company, the directors also want to see what is the impact of following a training on the performance. And they implemented the Intuo tool. And they are doing regular pulse surveys to track employee engagement. And they also have a performance cycle into the app. And they are going to see on a regular basis what is the impact of following a training on performance and also on employee engagement. And there they need the predictive analysis. So they also need more tools, and that's a different kind of knowledge and resources that you need. So what I want to show with that is both questions are relevant for a business. Both ways of trying to solve the question bring value, whether it's descriptive or predictive. So both ways bring value to an organization, but it just depends on what your business is asking.
Okay.
Glenn emphasizes that you can use HR data in different stages of maturity, but you have to get value out of it. If you're doing it just for the sake of doing it, it won't work. If you're looking to start using HR data or you want to elevate it to the next level, be sure to check out Glenn's session. If you were there during the conference, you probably remember how excited we were for Peter's talk. We finally got to wear our I Love Peter t-shirts. Peter is thrilled about the changes that are happening right now, and he really urges you to prepare for future seismic shocks. Let's take a look at what he means by that.
But maybe we have to prepare ourselves for a world where disruption and change is the only constant. I call this that we're probably going to experience a series of seismic shocks. Seismic shocks of all different natures. Some of that will be technological. My God, digital has become the new normal, but that's not the last technological seismic shock. I mean, look at something like, for example, artificial intelligence, what we've talked about for the last 10 years, but we're now beginning to see that this is going to play a huge role in the next decade to come. So digital wasn't the last technological seismic shock. We're going to see a series. But it's more than just technology. What about ecological seismic shocks? What would happen if the sea levels would rise for a few meters? We're now experiencing an absolute massive biological seismic shock. And look at the tensions that are mounting now between the US and China. Maybe geopolitical seismic shocks are going to be part of the canvas of how to look at business. So in my opinion, what we're going to have is a series of constant changes, seismic shocks of pretty big proportions, and it is going to do something. It's going to trigger something, and it's going to trigger a number of shifts. Are you in an organization that is capable of reinventing itself, and can you reinvent HR? And we don't know what's going to happen. One thing is clear, your tools will have to change. We talked about it earlier with Glenn. And Glenn said very clearly, I mean, we're now in a world where data becomes the tool to change things. And we can learn a few tricks from marketing. In the last 10 years, every marketing department has learned that we need to focus on relevance to talk to consumers. We need to focus on the individual. We need to bring value in the data. We need to think about things proactively before they happen, and we need to use the power of the network. These are 4 things we can perfectly apply to HR as well, where we can use the data at our disposal to focus on the individual employee, to focus on real value proactively, and use the power of the network. The world is in flux, constant change. But if we want to empower HR, if we want to reboot HR and focus on a changing skill set, but focus also on the mindset of an organization which is going to be remote, and how to still capture the engagements and the hearts of employees, that is something where we need to redefine what is the individual and what is the collective. I think we are bracing ourselves for a world where the never normal might be the only constant we have.
Wow, I really love that last part. It was super powerful. Peter really knows how to tell a good story. Check out Peter's full session on day 1 in the link below. We kicked off day 2 of the conference with Lucy Adams, and Lucy is calling herself a recovering HR director. She's completely reimagining the HR playbook, kicking out the myths, and she's doing that by using the EACH model. Let's take a look.
The HR manual told us that if we wanted our people to be skilled and equipped for the future, then we had to set objectives at the start of the year, and then we had to review their objectives at their performance at the end of the year and give them a rating out of 5. It told us, this manual, that if we wanted to know that our people were engaged and excited about working with us in the future, then we had to do an annual engagement survey, and we had to send out around 50 questions once a year, and then we had to collect all the answers in, send them off to a consultancy for analysis, and then we had to send a report out to everybody, cascade that report, and then we had to do action plans for every team. I just got to a point where this just doesn't cut it. This just doesn't work anymore. Maybe it never worked, but it certainly doesn't work now. The model that I want to talk to you about is called the EACH model. Employees as adults, consumers, and human beings. So we'll start with adults, and most organizations are incredibly parental. Most organizations, the way that they treat their people, their employees, and even their leaders is very much either as a caring parent or a critical parent. Let me just explain what I mean by that. So a caring parent is where we feel that we need to spoon feed people, where we need to hold their hands, where we need to look after them. It comes from a good place, but the underpinning assumption is that we don't trust people to use their own judgment. We don't trust people to behave like grown-ups. We don't believe that employees are capable of owning their own careers, their own performance, making their own decisions. So we have to do it for them. We treat them like children. The critical parent is the parent that is the rule makers, the policy creators, the process designers. And the underpinning assumption there is that we don't trust people to behave well. Well, we don't trust a few people to behave well, but we design all of our rules and our processes around this minority, this rogue group of people who are going to behave badly, but we apply it to everybody. And unfortunately, when we take this parenting approach, the caring parenting, the critical parenting, what we get is a passive and compliant workforce. So adult to adult also means that HR is no longer the nursemaid or compliance officer. We didn't come into HR to check whether forms were in. We didn't come into HR to check whether people have done stuff. We came into HR because we wanted to create an environment where people could do their best. So adult to adult helps us do that.
So that is what the A stands for. Obviously, Lucy discussed the other letters as well, but it was a bit too long for this short compilation. I really welcome you to go and check out her entire session. Here is me asking Lucy a question from the audience. What does she think of having only one feedback moment per year? Let's ask her. So another question was, you gave the example of Adobe. So an employee is empowered with his own development, right? But what if he never asked for feedback? Do you think it is necessary to have at least one mandatory one-on-one conversation with that person per year?
I often hear this, that people say, oh, well, we know it's not great, but at least they're having one conversation a year. I think we should unpick that a little bit, because we know that if you've got a manager that doesn't have regular conversations with their employee, then they're going to be really bad at doing that one conversation a year. One piece of feedback given to you annually can do more damage to your motivation and performance than not having anything at all. So actually, is it better than nothing? No, I think it's worse than nothing. What I think we're interested in is yet again, what about the small percentage of employees that don't do it? Well, probably you've got bigger problems with them than the fact that they haven't asked for a performance discussion. So why not deal with them separately? Why not say, you know what, I'm really concerned because you show no interest in your performance at all. And actually we need people who are curious and agile, and that's a real problem for us. Why aren't we dealing with those individuals in a slightly different way, which might mean giving them a kick in the, the backside, might mean moving them out, might mean giving them, some very difficult feedback about what is expected. If you're going to work here, then we expect you to own your own performance.
What Lucy just said is really what we believe at Intuo. You have to put employees in the driver's seat of their performance and create a process for the majority rather than for the small percentage. Really great session, Lucy. Now that we've talked about performance, we also need to talk about engagement. During Simon and Florence talk, they discussed the importance of employee engagement pulses during this crisis and how it has affected businesses, whether this was positive or negative.
Yep, so as we already said, we had these questions concerning teleworking and concerning going back to the office. And of course, we have different topics in our platform as well that customers were using before the COVID situation. So these are very interesting topics for us to have a look at on how everything has been changing. We've highlighted a few topics which we think are very interesting to have a look at, such as company alignment, feedback, recognition, relationship with colleagues and managers. And these are a few, let's say, interesting things that we've seen from the data and the analysis that we've done. So one of the first things that we've seen is company alignment. These were questions that our customers used, and these were concerning vision, mission, communication internally, for example. And when we, let's say, have a look at these figures, we see that before Corona, it was a bit lower than during Corona. It's something you see in the qualitative feedback that we heard from our customers as well. And when talking to customers and when having these interviews, we heard that beforehand, so before Corona, we heard that communication was done via different channels. There was email, there were town halls, there were different managers who said different things, all kinds of ways to communicate. Whereas now, we heard that a lot of our customers really thought it through and made one, let's say, communication line in which managers communicated everything that was necessary for everyone to know. And of course, we see this in our statistics as well, that company alignment went up.
This is a really cool example of how this crisis made organizations communicate differently and create more unity within an organization. If you would like to see more results, please check out Simon and Florence talk. As a last clip, we want to show you one from Lisa and Tim's talk. And Lisa doesn't really like the word HR. She thinks traditional HR needs to change, and she really wants to make a financial impact with her team. Let's take a look at what Lisa thinks the future of HR will look like.
So, looking forward 2 to 3 years from now, what do you see as the let's say the opportunity for Unit 4 or for HR leaders in general?
So obviously, I'm going to say for the Unit 4 is number one in the space, clearly.
Yeah.
For HR professionals, I think I really don't like the term HR, because I think human resources is quite old school in our new world, and we're dealing with people. And so I foresee that over the coming years, if we as people experience professionals can get to a state where we're adding value commercially, it will really change the kind of game changing for where you want to get to in your career. It does make a difference.
Yeah. And I see this happening more and more. Do you see more and more business people moving into the role of CHRO?
Yes, but I also see that HR professionals with a broad commercial background can actually transform into other areas of the business. I think we put a ceiling on, and we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Anything is possible.
Some really great motivation to end this compilation with. Of course, we weren't able to cover all our great speakers, but you can always rewatch the recordings on our YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you will all join us October 15th for our next conference. See you there.